going to be working with the half pad again with Castor. I know we worked with it before just briefly, but today I wanted to work a little bit more extensively and kind of put it on his back and see how that goes. So back using the arena fence instead. It's just a little bit easier and it's a little bit shorter so I can kind of get the pad up over it. So I'm just let him sniff it, and then I'm going to kind of touch him on the shoulder. So he wasn't super thrilled with that first touch. He had a little flinch there. I should have still fed him afterward because I want him to get conditioned to the pad comes and touches him and he gets a reward even if he jumps. It's not a big deal. And I probably should have stayed on his shoulder a little bit longer because he's flinched the last 2 times I've touched him on his belly. So a flinch is just the same as him running away or jumping to the sides. We don't want any part of those. I want him to just stay nice and relaxed and stay the same in his body if the pad wasn't touching him versus if it was. So again, he kind of flinched on the flank a little bit. So that's what I'm saying, like I should have stayed on the shoulder a little bit. It's not as sensitive. Stayed on the shoulder, stayed on his back, maybe done a little front legs. The flank's a little bit more sensitive, and I moved on to that maybe a little too fast. He had a little jump there too, so probably just a little slower overall, but I'm also giving him like a bit of a space so he can kind of chew. I probably could have slowed all of that down as well and not approached, I'm not like running, but I could have just slowed the whole process down and kind of maybe given him a little bit longer time to chew as well. And he's handling the pad on his back quite well, but I really would have liked to work through a little bit more to where he's not having those flinches on his legs and his flank. But overall, he's doing well with the pad on his back. And he's got pretty relaxed body language, so I do like that. Now I'm just going to place it on his back and then just let him rest for a second, or just pause for a second. So it's just sitting there for a second without me touching it. I'm not quite ready to leave it on there for that long, but it's just a little introduction. So I just turned him around and I'm going to work on the other side. So same process, probably should have showed it to him, let him touch it with his nose, allowed him to touch it for the first time on this side instead of I touch him with it. See, we've got that flinch is still in there, so, and I asked him to come up closer and he was going back to the other side. So there's a little bit of confusion there and I have a little too much tension. His body language isn't horrible, but I don't love the flinching, so definitely got to be aware of that. And I should have just slowed the whole thing down. And his reluctance to come back to the other side. So could be a couple things. Could be him just worried about this. Could be him just thinking, okay, well, we were working on the other side and he'd been rewarded there, so he wanted to go back to that. But that is important. So I think there he was like trotting toward it. So I think he's just trying to go back to the side that he was being rewarded on. There we go. He figures it out. But since he did move over when I put the pad down, he might have been a little worried about the pad too. So just desensitizing him a little bit with my hand, ask him to do a behavior that he knows, and he's a little stressed because he knows how to pick up that foot and like bend his knee, and he wanted to kind of stomp it down the first couple times, so you can still see that he's a little tight and tense there. So I rewarded him when he did the foot lift correctly, and then I'll let him just sniff that pad and kind of start a little bit more slowly. So I would have definitely avoided some of that tension there if I would have just gone a bit slower, like I was saying earlier in the video. So should have started this side more like this, with him allowing him to touch it with his nose and then touching with his shoulder. Definitely should have spent more time on the shoulder than I have. I just went right to like his belly flank area. He's decent with the front feet. See that lean? So I'm going to be like, okay, I'm going to back up and then try and approach more slowly. So that was good. I am watching him and noticing that he's got that flinch and that lean away. But there we go. That was nice. Just should have slowed the whole process down a little bit and stayed in more spots, because I'm just like going through, like, touch his hind leg, touch his hip, touch this. So I mean, I recognized when he did the flinch, that was good, but I should have slowed down and just worked on that shoulder a little bit, then worked on the belly a little bit more, then the legs, and then, you know, continue on down his body. But that's how I would be doing it now. Because just because he has that hind leg cocked does not necessarily mean that he's relaxed. So that is also like your preparatory movement, so you gotta just keep that into consideration. But he's decent with me putting it on his back, so that's good. And his neck's a little high, I'd like it a little lower. And he's probably taking the treat a little bit quickly than I'd like. Overall, not too bad.